You sat down to read this, and your phone buzzed. You didn't even think about it. Your hand moved before your brain caught up. You checked it. Nothing important. A notification from an app you don't remember downloading? You put it down. 30 seconds later, you picked it up again. You don't know why. You just did. This is not a willpower problem. Your brain is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is that nobody told you what you were actually built for. For 300,000 years, the human brain did not focus. Not the way you think of focus. It scanned. It watched. It waited. A hunter-gatherer on the savannah did not sit in a chair and stare at a single object for 8 hours. That would have killed them. Their survival depended on noticing everything at once. The crack of a branch, a shift in the wind, the silhouette of a bird that meant water was near. Their attention was wide, loose, and lightning fast. It had to be. In 2016, a team of anthropologists spent months living with the Hadza in Tanzania. They gave them standard attention tests, the same ones Westerners fail when they can't stop checking their phones. The Hadza performed differently. Not better, not worse, differently. Their brains were constantly pulling information from the periphery. Sounds, movements, social signals from across the camp. They could track multiple streams at once because that was the job. For your ancestors, distraction was not a flaw. It was the feature that kept them alive. Then, roughly 12,000 years ago, everything changed. We invented agriculture, and agriculture invented a completely new kind of human attention. For the first time, people had to do the same thing, in the same place, for hours without stopping. Plowing a field, grinding grain, watching crops that grew too slowly to hold the mind. This was not natural, it was training. And it required something your ancestors never needed, the ability to ignore the world. By the time the Industrial Revolution arrived, this training had become a moral code. Factory whistles, school bells, time cards. Children who stared out windows were called lazy. Adults who drifted in conversation were called rude. A new word entered the language, attention span. As if focus were a distance you could measure, and some people simply couldn't run far enough. But here's what nobody said out loud. The people who designed these systems weren't trying to help you think better. They were trying to make you predictable. A worker who focuses for 12 hours is easier to manage than one who notices the weather changing. But that's only half the story. Because even after we industrialized attention, the human brain still had escape routes. You could walk to work. You could daydream on a train. You could sit on a porch and watch nothing happen for an hour, and your brain would reset itself in ways that science is only now beginning to measure. What destroyed focus was not the factory, it was what came after. In 2007, Apple released the iPhone. In 2009, Facebook added the like button. In 2016, TikTok arrived in the United States. These were not just products. They were precision weapons aimed at the exact architecture of ancient human attention. Every notification is designed to trigger the same neural pathway that once made your ancestor turn toward a snapped twig. Every infinite scroll mimics the scanning pattern of a forager searching for ripe fruit. Every autoplay video is a predator your brain cannot stop tracking. The difference is that on the savannah, these interruptions were rare and meaningful. Now they arrive 40 times an hour, and your brain treats every single one like survival. In 2023, Gloria Mark, a researcher at UC Irvine, published a study that should have changed everything. She had been tracking human attention spans for over 2 decades. In 2004, the average person switched tasks every 3 minutes. By 2023, it was every 47 seconds. Not because we got lazier, because the environment got louder. And here's the part that should terrify you. Mark found that when people are interrupted, they don't just lose the time of the interruption. It takes an average of 25 minutes to return to the original task. But most people never return at all. They switch to something else, and then something else, and then something else. Until the day is gone, and the work is still sitting there, untouched, and you have no idea where the time went. But it gets worse. Your brain has a chemical reward system that evolved to reinforce survival behaviors. Find food, release dopamine. Escape danger, release dopamine. Solve a problem, release dopamine. This system is ancient and powerful, and it was calibrated for a world where rewards were scarce and effort was high. Social media inverts this equation. It delivers dopamine on demand, with no effort, no risk, and no natural endpoint. A like, a comment, a new video that starts before you decide whether to watch it. Your brain did not evolve to handle this density of reward. It thinks it has stumbled into the richest environment in the history of the species. So it keeps searching, keeps scrolling, keeps hoping the next thing will be the one that finally satisfies it. It never is. In 2021, researchers at Stanford ran an experiment that revealed something even darker. They took two groups of students. One group was allowed to keep their phones nearby, face down, silent. The other group had their phones in another room. Both groups took the same cognitive test. The group with phones nearby performed significantly worse. Not because they checked them, they didn't. The mere presence of the phone was enough to fracture their attention. Your brain knows the device is there. It is keeping a sliver of itself ready for the next hit. And that sliver is stolen from whatever you are actually trying to do. Think about what this means. You have not lost the ability to focus. You have lost the ability to be alone with your own mind. And that is not a small thing. For 300,000 years, your ancestors had something you almost never experience. Silence. Not the absence of sound, the absence of demand. The space between a task and the next task, where the mind could wander, consolidate, make connections that focused attention never allows. Neuroscientists call this the default mode network. It activates when you are not focused on the outside world. It is where you remember who you are, where you imagine the future, where you solve problems you didn't know you were working on. And it only turns on when the noise stops. But the noise never stops anymore. You wake up to a screen. You commute with a screen. You work on a screen. You relax with a screen. You fall asleep next to a screen. And every one of those screens is engineered by thousands of people whose job is to make sure you never enter default mode. Because default mode is not profitable, a mind at rest does not click ads. A person daydreaming does not generate data. The economy of attention runs on your fragmentation, and it is winning. So what actually happens when you try to focus now? Your brain begins the task. It encounters difficulty. This is normal. Every meaningful task has a moment of resistance. But instead of pushing through, your brain now has an escape hatch. The phone, the tab, the notification. And the escape is not just easier than the work, it is chemically more rewarding. Over time, this creates a loop. Difficulty triggers avoidance. Avoidance triggers dopamine. Dopamine reinforces avoidance. Until your brain learns that focus itself is the threat and distraction is the safety. You have trained yourself to be afraid of your own attention. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. This is not your fault. You did not design this world. You were born into it. Children today are handed devices before they can form sentences. Their brains are wiring themselves around interruption before they ever learn what sustained attention feels like. By the time they are teenagers, their neural pathways are so optimized for rapid switching that deep focus feels not just difficult, but physically uncomfortable. Like trying to hold your breath. Like something is wrong, but nothing is wrong, not with you. What if the inability to focus is not a disorder? What if it is your brain correctly identifying that the environment it occupies is hostile to the kind of attention that built the human species? What if your restlessness is not a flaw, but a signal? A 300,000-year-old program screaming that something about this world does not fit. In the 1990s, a psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi studied something he called flow, the state where you are so absorbed in a task that time disappears. He found that flow requires three things: clear goals, immediate feedback, and a challenge that matches your skill. Notice what is not on that list: notifications, multitasking, the possibility of something better arriving in the next 10 seconds. Flow is what focus used to feel like before the world broke it into pieces. And the research is clear. People in flow are not just more productive, they are happier. They report the experience as the most meaningful moments of their lives, not because they achieved something, because for once, their attention was whole. We traded that wholeness for a feed that never ends, and most of us never knew it was a trade. Your ancestors did not have focus problems, they had predator problems. They had drought problems. They had problems that demanded the exact kind of scattered, hyper-vigilant attention that now makes you check your email at a red light. They were not better than you. They were matched to their world. And you are mismatched to yours. The question is not how to focus harder. The question is whether you are willing to reclaim the one thing the economy does not want you to have: the space to be bored. The space to struggle with a thought until it yields. The space to sit in a room with no screen, no podcast, no background noise, and find out what your mind actually does when nobody is selling it something. It will feel uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is not failure. It is your brain recalibrating. It is the ancient program reasserting itself. And if you let it, if you protect that space the way your ancestors protected their fire, something returns. Not productivity, not efficiency. Something older. The feeling of being exactly where you are, with exactly what is in front of you, and nowhere else to go. That is what focus was. That is what it still is. You just have to remember how to sit still long enough to find it.